So I'll give a few preliminary reminders about walking meditation, some instruction. Maybe this will help you. In walking meditation, it's helpful to have a place that's undisturbed and is between, say, 15 and 60 feet long. So you can do it indoors for sure. I do it in my kuti all winter long. You don't need very much space. You just need enough space to take several strides and a place to turn around at either end. So pick out a nice spot if you haven't already done so. When you start off, go to one end of your path and hold still for a few minutes. Just stand in stillness and remember what it is that you're here to do. And maybe why it is that you're here to do it. What is it that's motivating you? If you can reconnect, this is true for any meditation session, if you can reconnect with the impulse in your heart for liberation, for awakening, and the goodness and the wholesomeness and the worthiness of that ambition, whether you fully achieve it or not, just to be working on it is incredibly valuable. If you can reconnect with that feeling of its worthiness, of its beauty, of how fundamentally good and worthwhile it is, how much you admire the Buddha, and how much you're inspired to try to practice his teaching, then your ability to keep your mind on track, on task, will improve. So you're just conditioning the mind. By doing a reflection like this, you're conditioning the mind going forward, and how the mind performs going forward will be influenced by that effort at conditioning the mind in a wholesome way. Contrast that, if you will, to the idea of spending the first couple of minutes in your walking path thinking about all your problems, right? It's going to be really hard to keep your mind on task. So let go of all your problems, everything else that might be of concern. Use this as like a kind of a time apart from all those concerns, and really try to gather your attention and your willingness to just be here now with this practice for the sake of further conditioning your mind in a wholesome way. So you spend the first minute or so standing quietly on your walking path at one end, with your eyes closed, standing still, and just bring this to mind. Bring to mind your motivation, your aspiration, the thing that brought you here in the first place. And if you can feel it, it's going to make your task a lot easier. But whether you really feel it or not, that's okay. Just ruminate these thoughts, and that will help plant the seed. So when you're ready, then open your eyes, look at your path, and then just start walking across your path almost at a normal pace. Just sort of step, 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 and go from one end of your path to the other. When you get to the other end, stop, know that you've stopped, and then very, very mindfully turn around. Right? So don't just sort of turn around and start again. Just notice every little act that's involved in turning around. The intention to turn around, the lifting of the feet and moving them so that you turn around very slowly and carefully. So as though you're trying to not disturb anything. You're trying to be as still as possible and yet still turn around. So turn around mindfully and carefully, face the path the other way, and then walk back across. As you're walking, direct your attention towards the sensations of the feet. So notice the sensation of pressure as the foot is on the ground. Notice how the pressure vanishes when you lift the foot up. And then there's another kind of sensation, the sensation of the leg moving, the foot flexing and moving through space, and then hovering above the ground and coming back down again. So as the foot lifts and floats and then places again, just notice the sensations that are associated with that foot. And so then move your attention to the other foot, take another step. Move your attention to the other foot, take another step. When you try to attend in this way, it's quite natural for your pace to slow down. So at first, you're just trying to notice that you're walking. That's like the whole gestalt of walking. Notice the fact that you're walking, and that's it. As you start to bring your attention more to the task, narrow the field of attention down to just the sensations in the foot. And then as you're doing that, slow your pace down, and you'll be able to see more detail. And you have to also bear in mind that this is a gradual process of bringing the mind's attention narrower and narrower, or more and more focused on just one aspect of what's going on. And the mind's likely to get distracted or become restless if you try to do it too fast. So just recognize how your mind is reacting to the practice. If you try to focus very quickly on the sensations of walking and the mind starts flying off a lot, it just means that, okay, you need to broaden your focus. Use a broader, larger, more variegated meditation object. It can be the entire body walking, the sensations of the entire body walking. Just notice that the whole body's walking and just walk across your path. So kind of bear this principle in mind whenever you're meditating. Start at the coarser, more easy to pay attention to objects. And then as the mind calms down, reduce your attention or bring your attention to something that's somewhat more subtle. So rather than paying attention to the entire body, just notice the legs. And then as the mind becomes calmer, rather than just notice the legs, just notice the feet. And then as the mind becomes even calmer, just notice the instantaneous sensations on just the bottom of the sole of the foot. So that's a pretty small area of attention to be paying attention to, but there's a lot going on there. I mean, that can absorb your entire attention as you're lifting the foot. There's thousands of little sensations on the bottom as the foot comes up, and as it rolls to the ball of the foot, there's all kinds of focus sensations right here, and then there's different sensations of something like relief on the heel of the foot where the pressure's been released. And so you can really see there's a lot going on there. Then as the foot comes up in the air, the sensations are different. And then notice the intention to move the foot, and so you start moving the foot forward as you're planning to place it down. And then notice the intention to stop, and how part of that's automatic, but part of it's also driven by intention. And then as the foot comes down, notice when it just starts to touch the ground, and then it rolls forward and it takes the pressure of the weight of the body. And then when everything's come to stillness again, move your attention to the other foot. So that's kind of where you're going. You start coarse, you gradually work your way down to something more refined, and all along the way, pay attention to how your mind is responding to the exercise. If it's really restless, then take that into account. If it's very calm already, then it's okay to focus more quickly. So as you're focusing on the sensations of walking, you're stilling the mind, you're bringing it to a greater degree of more durable samadhi, of concentration. The word that we translate as concentration, samadhi. It means collectedness, or kind of here and now-ness, or all together in this present moment-ness. It doesn't mean necessarily narrow, sharp focus, although that can be one way of developing samadhi. So as walking meditation develops a kind of a more durable, less fragile kind of samadhi. It's less disturbable. And then you bring that more durable samadhi back to your sitting cushion, so that when you sit, again, you have to move between sitting and walking very, very mindfully in order to preserve as much of your concentration and mindfulness as you can. And eventually you can kind of get into a rhythm where it's easy to get up, go do walking meditation, and then easy to come back and sit. And the mindfulness just gets more and more refined over time. But the key thing with all meditation is to make use of the feedback. There's a feedback loop that arises that you're trying to take advantage of when you're meditating. The thing that you're paying attention to is an anchor that will have a certain degree of clarity to it. And that degree of clarity depends on how the condition of your mind. So you use the clarity of your object and the ease with which you can hold it as a measure of how your mind is doing. If it's hard to hold, if it's vague, then you might have to adjust your object. You might have to adjust the kind of things that you're doing. You might even have to change your meditation object. You might have to change the topic that you meditate on. If the mind's too restless, you might have to do something like a mindful reflection in order to calm the mind down enough in order to take a physical object. So, for example, the reflection that I suggested that you do at the beginning of your walking, to think about your inspiration and about your intention when you come to meditate, that's a mindful reflection which helps condition the mind to be able to stay with the more subtle object, which is just the sensations of moving. So bear these principles in mind. You ultimately become your own meditation teacher by paying attention to the feedback that your mind gives you as you try to train it. Eventually, you'll be able to see what the mind is capable of doing in any given moment, and its tendency, like whether it's kind of going in the direction that you're intending, or whether it's getting scattered, and whether you need to change tack. So you work with your mind. You don't try to force your mind to do anything. Think of it like training a puppy or something like that. You're working with it in order to gradually bring it towards something which is more refined and which is more has more potency for revealing insight, which is really the purpose. Right? We want to get to the mind calm enough that it's able to see what's really happening in the here and now. And as you attend to what's happening in the here and now, you'll see how mind and body interact with each other, and how sensory contacts generate thoughts, and how those thoughts generate feelings, and how feelings generates grasping, and how grasping generates suffering. And you'll start to see the whole cycle of the Four Noble Truths happening in real time in your meditation. But the first thing is to get your mind calm enough that it can actually pick these things up. So with those suggestions, and if you've already got a great meditation practice going and my suggestions are just going to make it worse, then feel free to ignore everything that I just said. But with those suggestions, please, we'll use the rest of the period for walking meditation.